I am an artiste. I have a lot of very important things that I have to say, and I do this through the power of cinema. I've seen thousands upon thousands of films, so I am the arbiter of truth when it comes to good and bad films. I'm sure you know a film snob or two who has said something like this in the past, and to be honest, I probably said this a time or two when I was growing up. One question I consistently ask myself is my work good? I have the unfortunate gene of being a perfectionist, and I want every single frame of my films to be perfect. I want every word in the script to be perfect. There are a few major issues with this type of thinking that I would really like to discuss today. First is progression over progress. Focusing on creating something rather than perfecting it helps you learn and grow. Every project is a stepping stone towards mastering your craft. Malcolm Gladwell said it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert at something. Many young filmmakers, including myself, think that we can try and bypass this work. It's not helpful when we hear about extremely young filmmakers that get their big break at 18 to 21 years old. These instances are extremely rare and usually involve nepotism to some degree. If you hear about an extremely young filmmaker making waves in Hollywood, chances are that person is the offspring of somebody already in Hollywood or someone wealthy. It's not fair, but that's life. And if you're watching this video, you're likely going to have to work 5 to 10 times harder than everybody else in order to try and make it. Putting my bitterness aside, that's why I think it's extremely important to try to make as much stuff as possible. I made a short film about once a year on top of working on other people's sets as much as I possibly could. However, I wish I made more short films of my own just so I could get that practice in. Making something is better than making nothing. You don't learn anything if you decide to make nothing. Get those 10,000 hours in, especially while you're young, have energy, and don't have any major life responsibilities. Before we move on, I wanted to quickly go over some of the ways that you can support me. The easiest way is subscribing to my channel and watching my latest videos. I've also started a membership program that gives you early access to videos before they go live. It starts at just $3 a month on YouTube and Patreon, and if memberships aren't your thing, you can buy individual posts directly on Patreon without the membership fee. My feature film Cashing Out is available to watch on major platforms like Amazon and Apple TV, and you can even watch for free on platforms like Tubi, Plex, and YouTube. If you want to support directly, there's a pay what you want option on my own OTT platform that starts at just $2. And if you do watch the film, it would mean the world to me to leave a review on IMDb, Letterboxd, or your favorite platform. Lastly, if you're interested in my future film projects, you can sign up for my email list. I have some exciting new films that I can't wait to share with you all. All of these items will be linked in the description below. Thank you so much for the support. Now let's get back to the show. Next, creativity thrives in imperfection. Obsessing over good often stifles creativity. Bold, unique ideas come from when you're not afraid of breaking traditional rules or failing. There are rules in filmmaking and storytelling, but I think you can set most of that aside when you're starting out. I'm actually going to use my YouTube channel as an example here. I wanted to make videos like this for a very long time. However, I spent a lot of time in the early stages editing these videos. If you've been here for a while, you've probably noticed that my videos have a lot less editing in them right now than in earlier videos. I found myself spending a lot of time on things that didn't really matter and less time on the things that actually did matter. I wanted to share my knowledge in filmmaking that I've gathered over the last 20 years or so, but I spent a lot of time trying to make fun edits because that's what you're supposed to do in YouTube videos. People have the attention span of a fish. Quite frankly, like I speak kind of monotone and not the most exciting. My videos are definitely not the most attention grabbing, so I tried to counter that with fun editing techniques. But that led to me spending a lot of time on my videos, which means I was producing a lot less videos. I don't have a ton of time to work on these videos every week. Like I'm usually shooting things months in advance. For an example, I'm shooting this in mid-December right now, and I don't expect this to come out till January or February. And the whole idea here is that I am just trying to keep this simple. You know, I have a tendency to look at my script and look at the camera, which can probably be a little annoying to look at sometimes, but I'm not very good at improvising or remembering lines. So, at some point I'm probably going to have to get a teleprompter, but, I'm trying now to work against my flaws just so I am putting content out there. Luckily, these flaws don't seem to bother many of you too much. Like, you seem to appreciate the information a lot more than the fact that I'm not very good at, just speaking from the heart, I guess, even though I am speaking from the heart because I script out everything from the heart for the most part. But alas, I'm trying to focus more on my storytelling and just getting the information out there instead of just trying to make the most interesting YouTube video possible. Is that going to make my YouTube career blow up? No, probably not. But it's going to create a more useful video because I'm spending more time focusing on what matters. And what's ironic about this is that my videos with less editing are doing way better than any of my edited videos ever did. I'm making the videos that I want to make at a reasonable pace so I don't burn out, and I feel like it's turned into a better product because of that. The lesson here is that focusing on creativity allows you to experiment and express yourself without any boundaries. Next, audience interpretation is usually unpredictable. What's good is subjective. A film you think is flawed may resonate deeply with somebody else. Don't let your perception limit your reach. One thing I love doing with my storytelling is trying to connect with an audience emotionally. I'll never forget when I first screened my feature film in a theater. I had a lot of my close friends and family at that screening, and seeing their reactions was incredible. I know having friends and family feedback isn't always the best. Trust me, my Letterboxd and IMDb reviews remind me of that daily. However, what those people think doesn't really matter because what matters is I created something that somebody connected with emotionally. You have no idea who is going to watch your film or what it's going to mean to them. I have a ton of deep connections to a lot of films where I've never expressed that to the filmmaker. If you're trying to go for a global reach, chances are your films are going to connect with somebody whom you've never met or is ever going to tell you what they think about it. That's kind of the beauty of art in general. I mean, think of all of the paintings and other types of works of art, books, etc., that were produced, 200, 300 plus years ago. Those people have no idea what people think of those works of art. And a lot of these works of art, didn't really do well commercially, when they first came out. Now, hopefully that your films resonate with somebody while you're still alive, as opposed to, back in the day when that wasn't so common. But you see what I'm trying to get here. And of course, there are going to be those people who watch your film and remind you of that this is not good thought in your head. That's okay too. Your films are not going to be for everybody. My film Cashing Out is definitely not for everybody. It's not the most well-made movie, but it's the best movie that I could make at the time that I made it, and I'm really proud of that. Those bad reviews did bug me, and to some degree it still does. But at the end of the day, I was able to make my film without limitations, and I actually finished it. Not many people can say that. Next, failure teaches the best lessons. Mistakes in early projects reveal what works and what doesn't, helping you develop your voice and technical skills. I spent a lot of my later high school years and early college years watching DVD commentaries or interviews with filmmakers on YouTube. It's really easy to misinterpret a director's first film, especially being good. Quentin Tarantino made Reservoir Dogs as his first feature, but he also spent a ton of time on other people's sets, as well as failing to make his actual first feature. While I don't know of many of Christopher Nolan's failures per se, he did make his first feature film on the weekends with practically no money. But before that, I'm sure he spent a ton of time perfecting his art with short films, studying other films, writing scripts, etc. We hear so much about great filmmakers' success stories and not enough about their early failures. That's something I would like to kind of explore a little bit deeper on this channel too, as I interview filmmakers, like asking them, like, what do you think your failures are? What are you learning from them, etc. Because the media tends to focus way too much on the good. What's going right? Blah, blah, blah. Maybe there's some bad press about a movie every once in a while, but people aren't really talking about, at least in terms of filmmaking education, we're not talking a ton about the failures or highlighting them as much, because that's obviously not sexy. What's sexy is that, hey, I made this film, it made $1 billion, and now I'm this great success in Hollywood. No, I want to get down to the roots. I want to hear about everything that went wrong, what you learned from it, and how it made you the filmmaker that you are today. Here's an example of a failure from my personal experience. I attempted to make my first feature film when I was 20 years old. I spent some time crafting an outline for a script. I never actually wrote a full script, but gathered some friends and family as actors and crews. I had a camera that I had bought, I think maybe like a year prior or something like that. And then I shot that film for like 2 or 3 days and pretty much everything fell apart. Cast and crew just kind of vanished. Obviously, like if somebody's going to be a key actor in your movie and they decide to not do it anymore, that obviously creates some problems. And then at some point I just got so frustrated that I'm like, I guess I'm just not doing this anymore. And another great example of that is when I was in high school, I made my first like legitimate short film as like a thesis for one of my classes. Essentially, I recreated the first and last scene in Fight Club because I just watched Fight Club around that time and I was obsessed with it. So I'm like, I'm going to just recreate this, which pro tip, this is another tip I recommend too. If you don't have like a script or an idea or anything like that, I definitely recommend trying to recreate some of your favorite scenes. I do this all the time, especially like before I participated a lot in the 48-hour film project. And like to practice, sometimes I would just write a script, just from a scene in a movie that I really liked and try to recreate that scene. I've done that with Fight Club. I've done that with The Master. I know I've done it with a few other that I'm blanking on right now, but that is a great kind of like practice. I wrote a script for It Follows to recreate that opening scene because I just got a gimbal, so I wanted to kind of play around with that and do something similar. I've recreated some scenes from Halloween for, I think I did a short film like that too. I've done it for Star Wars. Like, I think it's a great idea to try to just recreate scenes, maybe even put your own little spin on them just to get some practice. Like if you can't think of an idea, just do that to get some practice. I went off on a little bit of a tangent there, but essentially, I was working on this short film and again, another key actor showed up for a day and I needed to shoot some scenes with them later and they just completely vanished off the earth, never came back. Had to come up with a solution for that. It wasn't the best solution, but for somebody who just made a crappy short film in high school, it was all I had. I could name a billion things that have went wrong on every single one of my films. The point being that each of these issues becomes lessons that I can use in later films. Next, authenticity over polishing. Audience often connect with raw, honest storytelling more than overly polished productions. Focus on being real instead of being perfect. The odds are always going to be stacked against you in terms of quality. You are not working with Arri Alexas or can hire a crew of hundreds of people. More than likely, you're going to be doing a lot of the work yourself, and it's going to show in that work. I've done sound for many of my films. I've done camera work. I've done production design. I've done this. I've done that. And all these little things have definitely shown in my work in one way or another. We need to stop looking at this as a flaw and more as a piece of the work as a whole. I personally respect films a lot more when I can see the love and craft that went into it. Now, that's not to disrespect, all the talented people who work on massive Hollywood productions, but it's also easy for people like me to get caught up in all of that because we don't have the fancy toys or the crew. And we think that audiences and our peers are not going to take us seriously. Showing people that you have a unique voice, a unique point of view is way more important than making the best looking film. A perfect example of this is with filmmaker Joe Swanberg. If you haven't watched any of his films, I highly recommend checking him out. He's made many films without scripts, quite frankly, or fancy locations or camera work, and he's worked with bigger actors like Jake Johnson and Anna Kendrick. This is because he has that unique point of view and audiences respect him for it. Again, this is why I think it's very important to focus just on being authentic to yourself and your voice at the end of the day. Next, good is the enemy of done. If you obsess over making something good, you risk never finishing it. Completion in a skill itself opens the door to future projects. I know a ton of talented people who have gotten trapped in the mindset of making something good, which has caused them not to finish their work or make anything at all. I know many people who will get to the finish line of their editing, for example, and then just give up for some reason. One of the first things I tell people when they say, hey, I finished a film, like how do I distribute it? I'll tell them congratulations because of how difficult it is finishing a movie. I have fallen victim to this mentality myself. There are a ton of scripts I've worked on or written in the past that have never seen the light of day because I won't bring myself to finish them. I'm not saying that you need to produce every piece of work that you ever create, but I'm a big proponent of finishing what you start. Even if you decide to make a feature film that never sees the light of day, at least finish it. You owe yourself that much. Next, your first films are not meant to be masterpieces. Even celebrated filmmakers have rough starts. Those initial projects are for learning, experimenting, and building confidence. Again, you're going to run into a ton of outliers where a filmmaker's first film is considered a masterpiece. I even say this about a lot of filmmakers that I admire greatly. But to be honest, in a lot of ways, this is kind of like winning the lottery. However, I still think that needs to be celebrated, and at the end of the day, we all need to be allies and cheerleaders for each other. I saw an interview recently with hostage negotiator Chris Voss, who was talking about his belief in karma on the Iced Coffee Hour podcast. I'm paraphrasing, but he was talking about how he believes in karma and that you should treat people well because of it. You know, the typical treat others the way you wish you to be treated. I believe the same thing could be said about filmmakers and how they treat each other. I've seen a lot of negativity in this community, surprisingly from a lot of filmmakers in my local area. I think it's really important to be respectful of all skill levels. You and I both started somewhere, and I think it's really important to remember that. A lot of people would not give me the time of day when I was first starting out. And last, and most importantly, you define your journey. I'm going to try to keep this one short and simple, but the pressure to make good films comes from external expectations. Focus on your personal growth and artistic goals instead of meeting arbitrary standards. Embrace the process, let your unique perspective shine, and trust that each film you make adds to your legacy as a filmmaker. What do you think about what I said? Do you agree or disagree? What other pieces of advice have you gathered from your journey? I would love to hear them down in the comments below. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe to my channel and leave a like on this video. If you want to see more, I have videos somewhere linked down here that I'm sure you'd be able to enjoy. My first feature film, Cashing Out, is linked in the description if you want to help me out and give it a watch. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.